Hi, and in this video, I'm going to share 5 powerful steps to set boundaries with men. Hi ladies, Matt Shaffer here, your empowerment, connection, and relationship coach. I'm a former attorney who's committed his life to supporting you in creating the sort of fun, fulfilling, dynamic connections and relationships with men that you are so worthy of. And this is one of the most important topics I'm ever going to talk about: how to set boundaries with men and why they're so important. This is stuff I do with my clients and students every day, and we're going to dive into it in just a second. But before we do, take a second, hit that little subscribe button. Don't forget to click the little bell so you get notified when I'm putting out new videos, and be sure to click that link in the comments and caption. I have created some great training that's going to make a huge difference in your connections and relationships with men. And be sure to sound off in the comments on what your biggest challenges are around setting boundaries, because ladies, I get it. Setting boundaries can feel like a very daunting task with men, because a lot of times we have a lot of resistance around boundaries for a lot of different reasons. Maybe you might feel like it's masculine, right, to impose your will and set boundaries. Or maybe you're afraid you're going to push him away, right? You're either going to depolarize the relationship or you're going to push him away. But I'm here to tell you, fundamentally, men are craving boundaries, and it's actually going to strengthen your relationship, deepen your connection, and give any connection you have with a guy a greater chance of success if you set boundaries effectively. So let's go through the 5 steps that are going to help you set the best, healthiest boundaries you've ever had with men. Now, the first step in setting healthy boundaries is to recognize your inherent value and worth. Because I've said this before, and I'll say it 1,000 times, boundaries are a deep act of self-love. It's about honoring yourself, your needs, and the sort of relationship that you truly recognize that you're worthy of, right? Boundaries are how we train other people how to treat us. It's how we mold the experience of our own relationships. And so before we can establish boundaries effectively, we really get to be in ownership of the fact, you get to be in ownership of the fact that you are worthy of being honored, of being cherished, of being treated, in a very specific way, right? And that boundaries are the way that you're going to create that for yourself. You can't depend on somebody else to treat you the way that you want if you don't express that to that person through setting boundaries. So get clear on what's the value that you bring to relationship. Why are you worthy of having a wonderful relationship? And if that's something that's a struggle for you, then you get to really look at your beliefs, right? Look at your beliefs around your own self-worth, around your value, and start to ask yourself, why am I afraid of boundaries, right? Why do I feel unworthy of standing in my power and really owning and saying, hey, this is what I want, this is what I need to be happy, and I'm expecting you to honor that. And once you start unpacking all that unworthiness and you start really connecting with your own inherent value, it's going to get a lot easier to set the boundaries that you're worthy of. And the second key to setting healthy boundaries is to recognize that men need boundaries. Boundaries aren't just for you, they are for us too. Because here's what boundaries are for men. Boundaries are a blueprint for us on how to make you happy. Okay? Like, you think about it, because if we don't have boundaries, if we don't know what you like and what you need, you cannot expect us to just be able to read your mind. Men are not mind readers. Like, we don't know what your needs are. And a lot of times in relationship, if we're getting to know a woman and she hasn't expressed to us what her boundaries are, what she needs, what she likes, what she wants, it's like we're fumbling around in the dark, in a dark room, and just like banging our head into the walls. It's not a fun situation. It can be very frustrating for us, right? So really, by setting boundaries constructively and proactively, you're actually helping us avoid a lot of conflict and a lot of frustration, and you're helping us understand the easiest and most effective and most efficient way to make you happy and to avoid a bunch of unnecessary conflict, which I guarantee you we will appreciate as we continue to get to know you in relationship. And a last important point I want to make around why men need boundaries is because we as men, we understand that it's our responsibility to be the the drivers of the relationship, especially physically in the relationship, right? So we understand that it's our job to initiate physical intimacy and to generally to be the ones to escalate physical intimacy. And I want you to recognize that just because a man, attempts to, push your boundaries or escalate physical intimacy, it doesn't mean that he's a bad guy. It doesn't mean that he doesn't respect you, but it's up to you, because even good guys will attempt to escalate. Even good guys will push on physical intimacy to see where your boundaries are, right? So it's sort of like a responsibility that you have to sort of establish those boundaries, to let him know what sort of pace you're comfortable with in relationship, in physical relationship, and in emotional relationship, and also to help him sort of understand, like what it is that you want in like, and how he gets to sort of behave with you so that you guys can have a fulfilling, meaningful connection. And the third step to set healthy boundaries with men is to connect with your vision for the type of relationship that you want to experience. And so you really want to start with the end in mind, right? So look at your vision for your relationship. What kind of relationship? What would be your dream relationship? How would you like to feel? Honored, cherished, safe, respected, excited, right? What sort of experiences would you like to share with your partner? And then ask yourself, what kind of boundaries would I establish right now in order to lay the foundation for that type of relationship? So if I want to feel safe and appreciated, then it's going to be up to me to help my partner understand, what safety looks like for me, right? What safety looks like in terms of how he treats me, in terms of how I want the pace of the relationship to go, and again, it's like, I feel safe when you hold the door for me. It really helps me feel safe when, you call or you check up on me after a date, right? To make sure I got home safe. Just little things like that. Like, you want to help him understand and be setting proactive boundaries with him as often as possible to help bring him into alignment with that dream relationship that you've created. So if you start with the end in mind, it's going to give you some great guidance on the kind of boundaries that are going to be most effective for you in creating the relationship that you want. And the fourth tip to setting boundaries with men is to, as often as possible, use positive, constructive boundaries. So positive, constructive boundaries are where you make an invitation for a man to take an action grounded in a positive feeling statement. I would love it if you texted me a little more often. You see what you're doing there? You're not saying, hey, you don't text me enough, you need to text me more. You're saying, I would love it if you texted me more often. And you could even juice it up even more and say, it brightens my day every time I get a text from you, and I love having bright days. So would it be okay if you texted me more often? See, you're grounding it in an invitation that it makes you feel good when he takes action. You always, as often as possible, you want to guide a man towards doing something that makes you feel good rather than pushing him away from something that makes you feel bad, right? Because again, positive affirmation, positive validation, and positive invitation is going to create a much more constructive dynamic than continually feeling like you have to reprimand him and push him away from stuff that you don't like. So ladies, you always want to operate from a fundamental premise that at the bottom of all of this, men want to make you happy. Any man who's emotionally invested in you or who really wants to get to know you better, your happiness is a primary prerogative for him. So inviting him to do things to make you feel good is going to really inspire him to sort of operate from within the boundaries of what it is that you want. And of course, if he's not paying attention, if he's not picking up on those cues, or if this isn't working, then you're going to become more firm, right? And you're going to let him know, hey, it doesn't feel good when you do this, or I'd really appreciate it if you would stop doing this, and you're going to become more firm and more assertive with him. But even then, you want to do your best to avoid becoming outright aggressive with him or punitive with him in the establishment of boundaries, or to threaten him preemptively. Because if you do that, you're going to run the risk of activating his mama trauma and getting him triggered and getting him to shut down and pull away from you. You know what I'm saying? So as long as you're in the early or mid stages of getting to know somebody and you're laying down those boundaries, keep it positive, constructive, or be very gentle with the negative boundaries or the prohibitive boundaries to avoid triggering him or shutting him down. And the last tip I have around setting boundaries with men, and this might be the most important one of all of them, is that in order for a boundary to exist, there has to be a legitimate consequence on the other side of it. So if a man, continues to not respect a boundary that you have tried setting in a positive way, and then you've tried to be gentle and giving him a sort of prohibitive boundary, hey, you need to stop doing that because it doesn't make me feel good, then you get to communicate to him that there will be a consequence. Hey, just so you know, if you continue to not respect this boundary, I'm going to choose to not be in a relationship with you anymore. Or, a man needs to understand that you mean that. He needs to understand that there are consequences for not honoring a boundary with you. Does that make sense? Because if a man feels like that you're expressing boundaries, but they don't have any teeth, they don't have any consequences, and he's a very strong-willed man, he's not going to respect them. He's not going to honor them. You know what I'm saying? And you also, if a relationship has gotten to this point, you want to start asking yourself, right? If this man isn't respecting my boundaries and I've tried to assert them all these different ways, does he really appreciate my needs? Does he really want to make me happy? Or is he more concerned with his own needs and his own happiness than mine? Because if a man's in that space, the relationship is not a healthy bilateral agreement anymore. It's not a partnership, right? He's trying to be more selfish about it, and that's probably a guy that you don't want to be in a relationship with. So remember these 5 steps to creating healthy boundaries with men, and you're just going to have much better relationships in your life. And that first step is to acknowledge and recognize and connect with your value, your inherent worth, that you are worthy of asking for what you want, standing for what you need, and expressing that unapologetically and warmly and lovingly to your partner or to any man that you're looking to get to know. And when should you be doing this? As soon as possible, as often as possible. Don't be shy around setting boundaries or telling a man what it is that you want or need or like, because that's all part of holding your frame, which is a crucial part of having a healthy relationship with them. And secondly, recognize that men need boundaries. We see them as a roadmap to make you happy. They help us avoid all the frustration and pitfalls of trying to read your mind and second guess what it is that you want or need or like. The more clear you are, the more effective we're going to be in making you happy. And that third step is to connect with your vision, right? Your vision for the sort of relationship you want, your vision for the experience you want to have in relationship, and then ask yourself, what sort of boundaries do I want to set right now in sharing what I need and what I like in this connection with this man to lay the foundation for that dream relationship. If you start with the end in mind, it's going to give you a lot more clarity around the boundaries that you want to set today. And that fourth step is to set positive and constructive, encouraging, inviting boundaries as often as possible, right? Use an invitation for him to take action that's grounded in a positive feeling statement. That's always where you want to start. It's much better to encourage a man to do what it is that you want him to do rather than to try to discourage him or push against him for doing things that you don't want him to do. And lastly, remember that boundaries without consequences do not exist. So be willing to walk away and be willing to communicate to him without anger. That if he's unwilling or unable to respect your boundaries as you've expressed them, that you're just going to choose to not be in relationship with somebody who isn't able to meet you where you're at, And as long as you're willing to, express to him and hold to those consequences, a man is going to be much more inclined to respect them and honor what your needs are. So I hope you enjoyed those 5 steps to setting boundaries. I'm going to link to some other boundary videos that I've created here at the end of this video. But before you dive into those or you start talking to your man about what it is that you want and need, be sure to hit that little subscribe button and don't forget to click that link in the comments and caption. I have created some amazing training that's going to make a huge difference in your connections and relationships with men. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.